In this example, I'm going to be creating a simple Vue.js web app that is secured with a Federated Google Authorization using AWS Amplify. The app will allow users to log in with a Google account, create a simple task list that is visible only to them. The tasks are stored in a Dynamo database and accessed through GraphQL. This is a very simple proof of concept application, but the example can easily be expanded with changes to the defined schema and additional Vue.js forms and display components. This demo assumes that you have an AWS account, a Google account, and are familiar with some aspects of creating a Vue.js application and comfortable using a CLI for development. Okay, let's get started. The first steps in this process are going to be to install the Vue CLI and the Amplify CLI so that we can create the project and add Amplify to it from the command line. I'm going to fast forward a lot of these terminal outputs because they take some time. Next step is we'll create the Vue.js application. I'm going to call this one Amplify Demo 1. We're just going to choose the default settings for the Vue.js library. Next, I'm going to change directories into the newly created Vue.js Amplified Demo project. Once in there, I'm going to open up my IDE on the project. I'm using Visual Studio Code. Once I'm in VS Code, I usually like to start up the Vue.js project just to confirm that everything's working and give me some output in case I break something inside the project. Once I can confirm that the default project template is up and running, I'll start to trim back all the things that are left in the default template that I don't need, including the route to the About page, which I'm going to remove. The About page itself. The Hello World component. And doing that, you can see that I break the project. It's a good output to bug check while you're working through code. Oh, still left a couple of things down here. Let me get rid of them. Still got to get rid of this component. Looks like I've got my project cleaned up. Oh, looks like I missed something on navigation. Let me get that real quick. Alright, now it looks like I have a completely set up default application with none of the extra junk, and I can get started working on my project. Now that I've got that done, I'm going to stop it and put Amplify configure into the command line. This will start to set up the Amplify project by creating the user account needed for AWS. When you click that, it will open up the browser to AWS console, allow you to log in, and when you've done that, you got to choose the environment that you're working in and give a username for the new user that's going to be associated with this project. This goes back to AWS console, Allows you to continue to set up the user in AWS console. You can choose the permissions. I'm just going to go with the default administrator access right now. Tags if you need them. And then you're going to create the user. After creating the user, you're going to take the access key and secret key from the console and put them back on the terminal into your project. So just carefully copy and paste them in. After doing that, you can give the AWS profile a local name. And then you've set up the new user. Next step is to initialize the project. In doing that, you give it a project name for Amplify. You choose your code editor, IDE. And I'm going to use the default settings for the rest of them. Then I'm going to choose the account that I just created in the previous step. Next, I'm going to use Amplify to add authorization to the project by using the command line amplify add auth. I'm going to choose federated login in this case, saving the username. After that, I'm going to say no, I'm done. This is the domain prefix for Cognito. You can use the default or set your own. I'm going to set my own in this case. And then it's going to ask you for the redirect URI. In this case, since we're working locally, I'm going to choose the URL localhost with the port number for my local project. And then it's going to ask you for the redirect URI. I'm going to put in the same thing. In this step, I'm going to choose Google. You got to remember to hit the space bar here to select Google and then hit enter. And then it's going to ask you for your Google Web Client IDE. To get that, you're going to need to go to the Google console and create a project. I'm going to pick Amplify Demo 1 and just click Create. After you do that, if you had console open already, you may need to switch to that project that you've just created. I got a bunch of runs through this, so you can see a lot of them. And then you're going to want to click on the OAuth consent screen from the menu. You're going to want to choose this as an external application. Give the application a name. Again, I'm going to choose Amplify Demo 1 just to keep everything straight. And then you just click Create or Save. After you've done that, you're going to go to Credentials. Click on Create Credentials. And click on OAuth Client ID. You're going to choose Web Application. And you can give it a client name. Again, I'm using Amplify Demo 1 here just to keep everything uniform. And then you're going to click Create. When you do that, it will show you your client ID and your client secret. You're going to copy them back into the terminal. You're going to want to Amplify, push those back up to the server to create your Cognito resources that you're going to need in the next step. With Amplify, it always asks you if you are sure you want to make these changes. And then you've created the Amazon Cognito resources associated with that Google account, but now you're going to have to put that Amazon Cognito URL back into the Google console. So you're going to want to go back to your project, go back to that OAuth client, click on Edit, and put that URL with HTTPS in front of it back into the authorized JavaScript origins. Whoops, I copied this a little weird. It should be just the URL. Then I'm going to copy this and use it on the next part, which is the authorized redirect URIs. And I'm going to paste that in. This has a slightly different OAuth 2/IDP response after the end of the Cognito part. Once that's been created, to get this actually working, you're going to have to use npm to install AWS Amplify and AWS Amplify Vue to the project. These are different than the CLI commands that we did at the very beginning of the video, but they'll install them in your package.json file. And then we'll move on to code changes. In the main.js, you're going to want to, for a Vue.js project, you're going to want to import the Amplify libraries and configure them for Vue.js. And that just takes copying and pasting this straight from my project. All right, I'm going to restart the project just to make sure I didn't break it. I'll have the link to this code sample project that has all the Vue.js code that you'll need that I'm going to be copying and pasting here, but you'll be able to see it on the URLs as I copy and paste them across, as well as in the description on this video. Next, I'm going to be making changes to the app.vue component in order to add authorization to the whole project and to be able to use different navigation depending on whether or not you're logged in. So open up the app.vue page. You can paste my entire code sample in because this is just the default template. Go ahead and paste this in. I'll walk through what some of these things are. This is the main navigation. We're going to actually have a tasks list. This is the navigation that changes depending on whether or not you're logged in. We're importing the Vue libraries. We're going to be doing a check user on the auth call on login and have some actions on the click buttons, as well as doing this hub.listen to any auth events that come through so that you can do stuff with Vuex if you needed to. Next, we're going to go and change navigation to include the new tasks page, which will be our authorized page, as well as an unauthorized page. So we're going to just add this to the routes, 2 new routes. And then we're going to start with the unauthorized routes, where we're going to push all traffic that tries to hit an authorized page but isn't authorized. Instead of redirecting them to a login, we're just going to, for right now, send them to an unauthorized page just to prove that a user can see a page and not be authorized. You don't even need any real code, just the template here. We're going to create the other new Vue component, which is the task, which is going to be the list of tasks as well as the create tasks individual Vue component. But initially, we're just going to use it to show that this is an authorized page. You can copy and paste the code directly into this new Vue component. I'm going to comment out these two components that we haven't created yet. And we're just going to put a little message on this page to say, hey, this user is authorized. Because they bypassed the before create, which would redirect them to the unauthorized page if they were not authorized. Okay, so now that we've created the task and the unauthorized page, we can save this, which should not break the page if we have everything set up correctly. And then we can see the change in navigation. We can click on the task, and since we're currently unauthorized, and then we can click on Login with Google, which takes us through the Google Auth process very quickly and easily. And now we can see that we can go to the authorized page. So the next steps is to add API to the project. We're going to choose a GraphQL API for this. The data is going to be stored in Dynamo database. We're going to give it a name, Amplify Demo. We're going to use the Amazon Cognito user pool that we created in the previous step. And that's all we need to do for that setup. It's going to ask us if we want to create the schema for our API and if we want to use a guided schema, which is a sample schema. We're going to go ahead and say yes for all of those. And yes, we want to edit the schema right now. This is the sample schema, but we're actually going to use a slightly different version of that schema. And that's located at the code sample linked to on the video description. So you can just copy and paste that in here. The differences here is that we've added auth with a rule to allow owner, so only somebody who's logged in can only see their records, as well as we've added an enum for the status on the task. And we're going to go ahead and save that and hit enter to continue. We're going to go ahead and Amplify, push that up. All right, it'll ask us if we want to continue. We're going to say yes. Ask us if it wants to generate the code for the API. Say yes. In JavaScript, choose all the defaults for the next couple of questions. We'll create the API on the back end. Takes a couple minutes. All right, now the API is created. So we're going to grab some of the code from the sample project. First one is this task queries library that I created as an interface for the GraphQL endpoints. We're going to go ahead and paste it in here. I'll explain all these additional files in a minute. But let's go ahead and save this off. And go ahead and get the code for the Vuex store. It's in the code sample as well. You can just copy and paste the whole Vuex code file right here. Replace what's there from the template because there wasn't really anything. I might have an ESLint issue here. Let's go ahead and run it just to check. I think it's just complaining because I'm not doing anything with that data element. And yeah, that's what it is. So I'm just going to console log it because it's an easy way to get past that. And sometimes it's a good idea to take a look at what's coming back from these GraphQL APIs just so you can see what the data looks like. So go ahead and console log that out. Should solve the problem. Looks like it does. I just wanted to go over real quickly using AWS Amplify in the Vuex store here. You can see that I've imported the AWS Amplify library and I'm using API and GraphQL operation from it. I've also imported my task queries library, which is just to abstract the complexity of the GraphQL syntax to make the library or to make the Vuex store a little simpler. You can see on the first action here called add task that it's taking in a task and it's passing that task to the add task method on the task queries object. If we look at that method, we can see it's just a wrapper for the GraphQL syntax for the query where I'm passing in a task and I'm using the title and the status of that passed in task in order to create a new record. When I execute the mutation, it passes back an ID, a title, a status, a created at, and an updated at. But you can pass back anything you want. When I've created the syntax for the GraphQL operation, I pass that to GraphQL operation, and I pass that to the API. That will return in a part of the data that responds will be this create task node, and that will include all the data that you've told it to reply with in the query that you made. You can see that I've done the 4 CRUD methods for tasks all here in the store. Add task, update task, and get tasks. Okay, in this project I'm using Bootstrap from CDN, so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste what I have in the index.html and the code sample and paste it into the project. And it's in the index.html file right there. There's other ways of doing this, but this one's pretty error-free and simple to do. Save it off. Next, we need to build the create task page. I'm going to first create the Vuex component, and then we'll go copy and paste the HTML and Vuex code from the code sample. It's in source, components, create task. We'll just copy and paste the whole thing in. let's at least test that this form functions real quickly. Go ahead and save it off. Check that it does an error. Looks like it's good. Ooh, looks ugly, but we'll fix that in a second. Let's test that it doesn't throw any errors when putting in a new task. This should be connected to the API already. Just put in a dummy one. Save it. No errors. Good. All right, let's get the rest of the components, and then I'll go over each one of the Vue components and tell you what they do. Next component is the TaskList component, which is essentially just the iterator for task items. We'll just copy and paste that. There we go. Now we got the task list. Next one we got to do is the task item. So we're going to go ahead and create a new file, task item.vue. I'm going to go and copy and paste the code again from the code sample. Copy the whole thing. Paste it in. Save it off. Save the tasks page. Okay. Now let's look at the three main Vue.js components that are used in this project. We have the create task, the task list, and the task item. The create task is an individual component that's used just as the form for creating a new task in the list. It's got a title and a status, very simple, and a button click event to save the task. On the save task, it's essentially just calling the dispatch for the add task and passing it in the new task here. If we look at the task list is just an iterator of task items. It's using the store, the list of items in the store, in order to iterate through it, and it has one method on it called delete task, so that when an individual task item emits a delete, this will the list itself will delete that item from the store. The task item is probably the most code-heavy component in the whole project. It includes the HTML for showing the task item when it's not in edit mode. When it's in normal mode here, you can click to toggle between edit mode and not edit mode, as well as calling the delete method on the record. If we look at those two methods down here, the toggle edit mode just switches the flag, and the delete task will emit the delete task up to the task list, which will deal with both removing it from the list as well as communicating with the store and updating it in GraphQL. If it switches over to edit mode, it becomes a form, and that form can either toggle back to non-edit mode if you don't want to save anything, as well as calling save task. If we look at the save task method, you could see that that switches it out of edit mode, attempts to create a new task with the data from the form, and calls the store.dispatch update task method, passing along the updated task record. Okay, let's do one last save and test the project. Refresh it so the Bootstrap gets pulled in, and there we go. And this is what it looks like. Can put in another task here. Create a task. We can edit a task in place. Save it. Clicking anywhere in the task will allow you to update it. You can delete tasks, of course, and put new ones in. Looks like I still have that authorized page thing down here. Let me finish this up, and then I'll go take that out. Looks like it all works, not having any issues. Let's just pull that one little test node out of there, and that should be it. If you have any questions or comments on how I did anything, complaints about me using console log or anything, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll respond to all the comments. This was a project for work just to show it to my team, so if you guys like it, give me a thumbs up. All right, thanks for watching.